welcome to the Blindfold Chess Podcast.
Hi there, it's me, Cassidy. I've been the writer and the voice of this podcast for a couple of years now. I have enjoyed doing the podcast, but life is starting to creep up a little bit, so this will be my last episode before I take a hiatus. I do want to say that I appreciate each and every one of you who download and listen to me. The listenership has been far beyond what I could imagine. I was hoping to hold off on making an episode until I hit master level myself, but that isn't happening anytime soon. In fact, I haven't played in a tournament in over a year at this point, and the thought of playing in one is still quite a daunting effort. A bit about me. My mom taught me to play chess when I was in kindergarten. I didn't take much of an interest in it until I reached high school. I joined my local high school club and began playing in tournaments with my initial rating of a proud 595. I found a lot of friends in the chess scene, including my first coach, National Master Tim McEntee, a 5-time Iowa state champion. It was around this time that I started to play blindfold chess. In my trigonometry class, a friend of mine started to play chess with me on a keychain that I had brought and set up during class. We'd piled our books up around the board to hide it during the lecture, until we were caught. We put the board away, and so we started to pass a note back and forth with the notations on it, and we kept doing that for the rest of the year. I finished high school and went into college with my rating in the mid-1600s. This is at U.S. chess level. After college, I joined my local university's club, and that had great chemistry. A group of us would travel to local tournaments in various states, and I made a challenge to myself to jump from 1600 to 2000 in 1 year. And in doing so, I was studying 4 to 6 hours a day. I won my first classical game against a master, and I finished really close to my goal. By the end of the year, I made it to 1975, and I qualified for the Iowa State Championship in 2018. And with months of prep and studying and training, I finished dead last. I got half a point in 5 rounds. It was a very good learning experience, but also very brutal for my confidence. It was about this point that I started to doubt just about everything that I knew about the game. The tricks that I could get away with on lower-rated players didn't work, and the base level of openings and middle game knowledge that I had showed cracks when I was playing higher-level players, so it felt like I had to tear everything down in order to build it back up. I got a new coach who focused on overhauling my openings, and I started putting so much pressure on myself to perform well. My rating fell back into the 1800s until I started to get my footing again. I fought my way back up, including a 60-point rating jump at the Minnesota Open to qualify for the 2022 Under 2200 Minnesota State Championship. At that state championship, I performed very well, scoring 3.5 out of 5, which was a tie for first, and I crossed to the 2000 rating barrier, classifying me as an expert. Since then, I reached a peak rating of 2031 before falling back into the 1900s. There has been a monumental mental block since then. I have a certain level that I expect to perform at that is interfering with my play. The game has sort of turned into a pressure cooker of expectations for me rather than fun, and I go into tournaments looking to mitigate disaster rather than trying to see what I can do. The last tournament that I went to, before round 1 started, I needed to go into the bathroom and vomit, just at the idea of playing. So, until I resolve that, I just don't know how I can compete at the level that my rating says that I am. At the same time, chess has been a monumental portion of my life for the last 10 plus years. I've built my persona around as the chess player. I've made this podcast, I've been a chess journalist, the editor of the Iowa Chess Magazine since the pandemic. I created a scholarship, and I've been a coach of this great game. But that's where we're at now. I'm going to take a break. I'm going to try to re-love the game, and I'm trying to relearn who I am and discover what is out there. So in today's game, I wanted to look back at a blitz game that I played back in 2019 that has always been one of my favorites. Cassidy Noble versus Jimmy Fuller from chess.com. Now, if we're ready, let's begin.
1. Pawn to e4. Pawn to c5. 2. Knight f3. Pawn to a6. 3. Pawn to d4. Pawn c capture d4. 4. Knight captures d4. Knight f6. 5. Knight c3. Pawn to e5. 6. Knight f3. Bishop b4. 7. Bishop d3.
I was a little overly concerned about the weakness of the e4 pawn. The correct square for the bishop in this setup would be c4 to control over d5 and put pressure on the f7 square. I end up correcting this inaccuracy in a few moves.
Pawn to d6. 8. Castle kingside. Castle kingside. 9. Knight d5. Knight captures d5. 10. Pawn e captures d5. Pawn to f5. 11. Bishop c4. King h8. 12. Bishop g5. Queen e8. 13. Pawn to c3. Bishop a5. 14. Rook e1. Queen g6. 15. Bishop e7. Rook e8.
This is where I start to see some options and I start to have a lot of fun. I can see potential problems for black with the king trapped on h8, with the bishop on c4 cutting off the a2 to g8 diagonal, the dark square bishop cutting off the f8 square, and I can see some opportunities where my white queen can go to h5, as well as my knight going to either f7 or g6 for checkmate or checks or discover checks. So now I need to figure out a way to dislodge the black queen from g6, get my white queen to h5, and free up the pawn that is on d5.
Rook captures e5. Pawn d captures e5. 17. Knight captures e5. Queen b6. 18. Knight f7 check. King g8. 19. Pawn to d6.
By sacrificing the rook on e5, I have managed to complete the first part of my plan, where every black piece is now sitting out of play. The bishop on e7 is secured with the pawn on d6. The knight on f7 is poised to do discover checks, and the bishop on c4 has open access to the a2 to g8 diagonal, and my queen now has open access to get to the h5 square.
Pawn to h6. Knight g5 check. King h8. Queen h5.
Placing the queen on h5 offers white quite a few opportunities. First off, the rook on e8 is hanging, so white could pick that up, as well as sneak into a checkmate with queen to g6 and queen to h7 checkmate. If white were to play queen to g6 and black were to play pawn h captures the knight on g5, white can just retreat and play queen to h5 checkmate. So black has some issues here.
Bishop d7. Queen captures h6 check. Pawn g captures h6. Bishop f6 checkmate. White is victorious.
Being able to sacrifice a rook in order to get the ball rolling, and then later sacrifice a queen, and then checkmate with two bishops and a knight on move 23, that feels pretty good. It feels great to play that kind of chess. Again, I wanted to say thank you to everyone who has continued to download the podcast through these 2 seasons of the show. Together, we've covered over 50 episodes spanning the history of chess, the different characters that we've had, the highs and some of the lows that we've had inside of it, and it's just been great to learn about the history. And I hope you continue to enjoy the game and continue to work on your skills and love this great, timeless game. I look forward to seeing you online or over the board.